Okay, I believe we are live. So, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the NAAAHR Young Professionals first ever LinkedIn Live event on career success strategies. I am Whitney Muhammad. I am the Associate Vice President for Higher Educational Partnerships with the Young Professionals Board. I'm super excited to be here with my fellow board member, and our expert panelists who are going to be sharing some great tips with us this evening. Before we proceed with introductions, I do want to take a moment to thank our executive board for the NAAAHR National Board, Mr. Nat Austin, our chairman, and Miss Erica Broadwater, our president. I also want to give a super special shout out to our sponsor, Miss Deidre Gwynn, all of our advisors, and the rest of our YP board member team for helping us make this event happen tonight. So I will allow Jalen to introduce himself. He is my co-host for the evening, and then we'll jump into introductions for our panelists and we'll get into the discussion.
No, definitely. Thanks, Whitney. Appreciate the intro. Great to meet everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Jalen Johnson. I'm Associate Vice President of Corporate and Community Partnerships for the NAAAHR Young Professionals Board. And so, like Whitney alluded to, we have an exceptional panel today with a variety of experiences across a number of different, large organizations. And so really they're here to just share some ideas and some key topics that really help shape, your career as a young professional. And so I guess before we get kicked off, I do want to make sure that we give an opportunity to give a proper introduction to everyone. So Lauren, I guess, do you want to kick us off? Just tell us a little bit more about your background, current role, your corporate experience.
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Lauren Sills. I really appreciate Jalen and Whitney for the intro, as well as the opportunity to talk with everyone today. I lead operations for the NBA Foundation. The NBA Foundation is the league's first ever charitable foundation. So when I say the league, I mean National Basketball Association. I'm based here in New York, and I've been at the league for almost 3 years, really since the inception of the foundation. When I mentioned that it's the first ever charitable foundation, it was an outcome of summer 2020 when the league wanted to do more than just say Black Lives Matter. And so $300 million was pledged for Black communities, specifically Black youth, ages 14 to 24. And our philanthropic mission is rooted in economic opportunity and empowerment and career readiness for Black youth. So I've been here for, just under 3 years, was the second person hired, and we've been trying our best to be a best in class and a reputable corporate foundation. And then prior to that, I've worked in a variety of different industries. After graduating from Spelman College, similar to Whitney, I've really been on a journey to just not only be my best self, but also be someone who gives back to my community. So I've worked in education, I've worked in corporate settings like JP Morgan Chase, as well as Nike and the US Senate. So a lot to share with you all today, and just thankful for the opportunity.
Wow, quite the background. Definitely looking forward to learning more from you, Lauren.
All right.
Aliyah, you mind sharing a little bit more about your background?
Sure. So hi, everyone. So excited to be here. Aliyah Powell. I'm the head of diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging at Favor Delivery. We're part of the HEB family. So if you're from Texas, I see you in the chat. I'm sure you're familiar with HEB, and hopefully you're ordering through Favor. We're a tech company, delivery app platform. And at Favor, I'm responsible for everything in regards to DEIB. So everything from marketplace, workplace, and impact. So also, a lot of work on our corporate social responsibility strategy, as well as far as it impacts our local regional communities. And prior to that, still was in tech doing some DEI work, but really got my start off in financial services. And so happy to kind of speak to my experience in that type of industry as well. Graduate of Howard University. So the real HU, anybody in the chat, happy to chat through that as well. But really excited to be here.
Happy to have you. Thanks, Aliyah. Anthony, want to round us off?
Yeah. Hello, everyone. It's an honor to be here on this esteemed panel. My name is Anthony P. Howard. For those of you who follow me on LinkedIn, I'm that HR guy. And my experience is 23 years in human resources as of this year, and 1 year full time as the founder and CEO of HR Certified. I think we all know that the U.S. human resource industry demographics are not aligned with current population trends. Our vision is to engage in attraction and upskill efforts of underrepresented groups to enter and grow successfully in the field of human resources. And how we do that is we activate the highest potential in HR and those that are looking to get into HR through the Powell certification process. You see those things behind me, professional coaching, and community. So looking forward to definitely bringing my insight because I've been on all sides of it. And I am a non-traditional profile, meaning I do not have a bachelor's degree, but I have traversed almost every role you could think of in HR with an associate's degree and with these letters after the name. So glad to be here.
Awesome. I have two things, Jalen, before we jump into the discussion. I just wanted to let everyone know kind of what our mission is as far as the Young Professionals Board is concerned. So a part of the reason why we're putting on this event this evening is because we're really dedicated to empowering young professionals to show up and operate as their brilliant and resilient selves. So we know that this panel represents that. So that is why we are here tonight. And also, I want to wish Aliyah a happy belated birthday. So we just want to celebrate her.
Thank you so much.
You wasn't expecting that.
Yes. So Jalen, if you want to get us jump started with our first topic, we will get into the discussion here.
Yeah, Whitney, sure thing. And so I think that's really a perfect segue, just as far as talking about the mission of the organization, and then just as I look at and hear about you guys' experience, and one of the common themes really being you guys been able to segue across different organizations, and that's one of those things that I think oftentimes you don't do it alone. And so I think a good place to really start out is just around mentorship and sponsorship, and those relationships that really can be career changing. So I just kind of want to hear from you guys, just any type of insights on how a certain mentorship or certain sponsorship truly influenced your career and helped you get to the place that you are now. So Aliyah, do you want to start us off?
Sure. So my response is going to be a little bit non-traditional of a response. So I do have also a bit of a non-traditional path. I'm a returner. And so, I took some time away from work for health reasons. Also, I grew my family. And prior to doing that, I was very resistant. So for all the overachievers, high performers in the chat, I know it's a lot of us out there who, just, thrive off of being the absolute best. Well, I think, for me, where a mentor played a huge role in my career path was telling me when to take a step back. And we don't talk about that a lot, right? I think, we're constantly looking for the next move, but sometimes part of playing chess is deciding when to kind of, take a quick pause. And for me, a very important mentor to me in my life who, basically everything I'd love to be in my field. She gave me the heads up of, hey, this is not the best environment. This is not the best situation right now. You really need to take a step back because that's what's going to be best for you. And you can come back stronger. I promise. Didn't believe her at the time, kept pushing myself and ended up really needing to take that step back ultimately. But if I can be at all a testament or a testimony to this, I mean, I'm in a fantastic place right now, career-wise, and I'm really loving what I do. And I took that much needed step back. And so I think, from a mentorship perspective, really having people who can put things into perspective for you and help you think about the long run and, the strategic steps that you need to make so that not only are you advancing your career, but you're protecting yourself as an individual, as a person of color, as a Black woman, right? For me, as a person with a disability. And so, having mentors who know you, who love you, and who are going to, help you kind of think through every step of the way.
It's a powerful story, I think, especially in this, environment where there's a lot of, burnout culture. And so
Yes.
really sure being able to hear that, candidly, someone means a lot. Anthony, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I actually wrote about this. I actually did not have a mentor, career mentor. So mine is a non-traditional response too, which is sometimes you may not need a formal, the formal aspect of a mentor. That it can be an indirect, meaning that, it's one that you're learning from and it's just a relationship hadn't been established, if that makes sense. I think what I realized over the period of the time that I was in human resources was one in which it didn't come to me, right? No one came to me and said, hey, you want me to be your mentor? And I never thought to ask because of the role that I play with being support to the business. And so I will say that don't ever be in a position where you don't think that you need a mentor or that you don't need a coach, because you do. And so now I'm in that aspect of making sure that regardless of your level, regardless of where you are, regardless of where you think you are, there's someone that you can see yourself emulating to be, and when you're in that circle to where now you're at a higher level or you can't grow anymore, you're in the wrong circle, right? So my aspect on that is you don't need the formal relationship. Seek out somebody who you seek to emulate, be around them in their space. If the opportunity exists, extend it, as well as, seek out professional coaching, right? As well. And you don't have to be a director. I thought that was the case too. You don't have to be, even if you're good at what you do, you still need a coach. I'm sure Lauren was like, yeah, okay. Yeah. Everybody there, they're great at what they do and they all need a coach.
Everyone does need a coach. So I'm glad you said that, Anthony. And Aliyah, I appreciate your story. I just wanted to pause and say that. Jalen, maybe back to your original question of the difference between mentorship and sponsorship. I think it comes down to work. You spend more time at work than you do at home. And so relationships are really key. And coaching is a part of that, where whatever got you to that job, those skill sets, you need to take it to another level to get to the next job. And so it's critical to have a person that you admire and look up to, which really is like a mentor. A mentor is the person who you're able to have a two-way relationship with. You're able to be honest with them, get feedback from them. They're able to kind of point you in the right direction. And that could be someone that you see at work. It also could be someone that's not within your work, space. I love that both Aliyah and Anthony said like non-traditional. Your mentor could be a peer who's in a different role at a different company, but is someone that you want to emulate. And so a mentor is that two-way street, where a sponsor is definitely someone who is able to really move forward your career. It's someone who is able to speak your name in rooms that you were not in, who's able to advocate and be a champion for you. So that could be someone who's maybe 2 or more levels above you. That typically is someone who's in your work environment or the space that you desire to be in. So it's important to have the distinction, but even more so, I actually advocate for everyone. I actually call it a board of trustees. That could be anyone. So some of my girlfriends who are even on this call, are part of my board of trustees. There are people that I'm able to go through for certain things that are experts in that area that I want to seek information from and also return in different ways. But that board of trustees could be a mix of mentors and peers, family, friends, other folks, coaches. And so really important that you have people around you who are going to push you forward in your career, that you can get real-time feedback, do the work, the internal work that's really important around this, because those are the people that are going to be honest and help you get to the next level.
Man, no, I'm definitely taking that board of trustees.
And instead, you know how we do this? I need y'all to put a 10 in the chat if y'all felt
yeah.
Put a 10 in the chat if y'all felt bored.
100.
Okay, 100. Yes. Okay.
Yeah, drop a 100 emoji in the chat.
And so, no, I'm like the board of trustees. I mean, that's really, really powerful there. And I guess one of the things that I'm just thinking about, just after, Anthony, your comments on just really seeking a mentor and seeking guidance, and then, even Aliyah, you mentioning just having that candid relationship with someone that can tell you even something that you might think is contrarian. So I'm just curious, is there any advice that you can give the audience just on actually going about finding the right mentor and the right sponsor, and what they should look for in those relationships? Or maybe in your case, did those happen organically, inorganically? Any insights to that degree?
I can start off there. I have a saying that your network is your net worth, right? I think a lot of times we, especially if we're underrepresented, we feel like we gotta know everything in order to survive. I think that's what leads to burnout and those type of things. So I always think of how I can be more resourceful by being able to tap into what I need when I need it versus having to know everything all the time. That baseline allows me to be able to be strategic on building relationships because I'm not good at everything, right? But I need to be good enough to be dangerous, right? And so those aspects is like I'm in HR, but if I work in biopharmaceutical, I'm not just going to surround myself with HR people. I'm going out to the business, right? I need to understand those numbers. I need to understand all the aspects of value chain so that I can be more effective in my role and partnering and influencing with the business. So when it just comes down to finding where to network and where to build your bench strength, just having a balanced approach that's aligned in with your career and where you're looking to go. And coming out of that comfort zone of just your zone, right? Of reaching out. So I'm an entrepreneur now. I'm in a whole new business aspect now, right? So now I'm networking with those that connect with small business. That's so different than when I was an employee, when I'm just in that whole ecosystem. And then also the other part is not just on the technical aspect, but also on your soft skills. Everybody's different and you have to communicate in a way that matches their communication style. And so I like to surround people who communicate. I'm high energy. Okay. I need to be surrounded by people who are not. So I can understand, because could you imagine that? All these boxes with all that energy, that's too much. Offset yourself, right, with those that are different than you so that you can, and then culturally as well, right? It's not just, look, I like my people. I love my people. But look, you got to also be able to identify because that's not the way the world works, right? So anyway, that's the aspect of the differences, aligning it, being strategic towards where you want to go and getting out of that comfort zone. Yep.
Yeah, for sure. And to add two things to that, in line exactly with what you said, I think just getting out of your comfort zone. I mean, I think, for most of us, if you're in HR or DEI, you're people. But everyone isn't, right? And after you've peopled all day, one of my friends has a shirt and it says, "I'm done peopling." Right? Like sometimes you don't feel like it. But part of kind of building those connections is, kind of just putting yourself out there. I mean, simple things like going on LinkedIn. If you find someone who you think, is interesting, does the thing that you're interested in, sending a message and reaching out. I mean, I know me personally, I've gotten messages about my experience or an event I shared that I hosted, or, a company that I worked at, and people have sent me messages and said, "Hey, just want 15 minutes of your time to talk about this." And I'll give them my time because I value that. Worst case scenario, someone doesn't respond to you or says no, right? And then the second thing is organizations like NAAAHR, the best, shameless plug, but best way to really, be able to make those connections, meet mentors. And there's also no shame in group mentoring, right? If you surround yourself with peers who have mentors, tag along to the things that they're going to meet their mentors, build relationships. And so there's plenty of opportunities to kind of organically build those relationships, and then also just intentionally as well.
And Aliyah, I want to build off of what you shared, because a lot of times people think mentors, you have to be someone who's young or maybe more junior. And actually, everyone who enters a new company, you are young in that company.
Yes.
And so keeping that in mind, a mentor of mine always shared, she said, the first 6 months to a year of your job, you should be heads down, but like you should be looking across at everything at all the time. And what she really meant about that looking across was actually you should be building genuine relationships across multiple functions, across all levels of employees. Do the work so you're able to have results. You can't just be first day, I'm asking Jalen or Anthony, can you be my mentor? It's like, you have to pay your dues in many ways, especially in the corporate setting. So it's important to have some points on the board, some wins. And then as you build these relationships, you can start to kind of identify and see who's similar to you, who's different from you, who has a skill set that you admire and you want to get after. So it is really critical that you do ask formally or informally, to Anthony's earlier point, but you should really get your own work done, have your own accomplishments so people can see the value in you. You can't ask to be a mentor or be sponsored if you aren't able to contribute to the larger organization or haven't been able to share how you've contributed and how you've been a value add to the team or the department. So those are the critical things about mentors and sponsors. People are willing to do it if you ask, but you've got to have a little bit behind you on your resume, your roles and responsibilities in order to find a successful match.
And Lauren, I look, when she was saying that, I was thinking that that's the same thing as it relates to connecting to people on this platform on LinkedIn.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You cannot begin off for the very first time asking for stuff. Like people, I understand, like people reach out and I make myself accessible. Like, hey, I'm a real person. But what I also realize is that you got to contribute in order for you to get something back. Networking is adding value, not just coming in asking. Right. Think of it. What's that analogy? Like a bank account. Like you coming in on zero balance. Don't ask for stuff and you don't got nothing in your account, right? And I'm not saying it from a numerical aspect, but just thinking about it as the value of the relationship. You have to build that. That's the reason why it requires you to nurture it, and for it, not just your resume, but how you. I like that aspect of, hey, can we have a 15? I'll give you a little gift card, Starbucks, coffee chat. Go ahead and give me my vanilla latte, but add value before you.
And Anthony, your point was like make deposits before you make the withdrawal. That was that banking term. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. And I know we've had a couple responses to this one, but one other thing I just want to add here, because I don't know how many people on the call struggle with asking for help, recovering from that. But just always remember that, and this is something that I learned through coaching. And again, everyone needs a coach, right? And one of my coaches was super impactful in kind of sharing this with me, but, just the feeling that you get when someone asks you for help, right? Like that's a good feeling. You like, when people go to you and say, hey, like, can you help me with this? And then when they're really appreciative and that's a connection that you've built, don't deprive people of that feeling and of that opportunity. If it's better to ask for help proactively, build those connections and those relationships than to be kind of begging for forgiveness later and trying to clean up a mess. And that's an easy way to burn a bridge, right? And so, to Lauren's point about coming in new to a company, one of the best way I've built relationships is reaching out, saying, hey, this is an area that I'm not clear on. I really want to learn more about this space so that I can, support you and your team better. Can you take some time to walk me through this? And instantly that's a new connection, that's a new relationship. And, they have the gift of being able to not only help me, but now help a whole function or, our entire company, honestly, move forward in an area that's a priority. So just keep that top of mind.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that, Aliyah. I think that is also a great segue for us going into our second topic, because all of the things you all mentioned, getting out of your comfort zone, asking for help, making sure that you are making contributions before you ask for something in return are all very strategic things that we have to keep in mind as we consider what we want to do next in our career. So our next topic is about being intentional with your career moves. So kind of building on having a mentor, having a sponsor, and what those relationships can do for you. What can we do for ourselves? What moves can we make for ourselves personally and professionally? And being intentional about taking our careers to the next level. So the first question I want to pose, and I think I'm going to go with Lauren on this one first, because I know how strategic she has been in just this constant elevation that she has gone through. How can we as professionals align our career goals with our personal values and passions?
Thanks for that, Whitney. Whitney's also saying that because we're constantly talking about career all the time. But I definitely appreciate the question. I shared a little bit at the beginning of my background. The last 13, 14 years, I've been able and blessed to work in a variety of different industries. Started my career off as a high school teacher. So education, government, working in the US Senate, working in nonprofit, working in a corporation like Nike, right? Or JP Morgan Chase, financial services, and now working in sports. And there's definitely a through line here, because people are going to ask, how did you become a 10th and 11th grade teacher to working now, as the head of operations for a foundation? But what I can share with you all is I know how to sell myself. I have skills and versatility, just like you all do on the call. And it's really about doing the work. So these are my 3 pieces of advice. The first is you've got to do internal work. This is where you have to be honest with yourself about what you aspire to be. If you see yourself jumping to different industries, if you see the versatility and the multi-dimension and multifaceted, areas that you're interested in, I say take the leap. But you've got to talk to yourself. You've got to really have those honest conversations. What are some of your core values and which companies align to those core values? So that's really important. Before you start anything, you've got to do the internal work. The second thing is to get organized. I'm always talking about this because I think it's critical. People love to talk about, I want to do this, but they're not actually getting organized or doing the research that it takes to make that jump or that pivot into a different industry, into a new promotion and or role. It's critical to get organized in a number of ways. The first is some tactics. You definitely want to be someone who is writing down in an Excel sheet. What are your top 10, top 20 companies? Who are the people that you know in those companies? What are the roles that you aspire to? I personally love to read job descriptions because I want to see the future. What are the future skill sets that I need to have to be in those roles? So getting organized and really kind of having your strategic plan of how you're going to get to X company or X role or get that promotion. The next is making time. This is so critical. Again, I think a lot of times we get complacent, which is natural. You've been in a company for 2 or 3 years. You haven't been promoted, but you're satisfied. But if you're looking to take that leap, which I encourage everyone to do, is you have to make that time. You've got to stretch yourself. You've got to be disciplined. So making time looks like this. If you live in a big city and you're taking public transportation, you should be reading a book, right? You should be reading the latest and greatest in your industry. You should be setting up Google alerts to learn what's happening in that field. Set up LinkedIn alerts so you know what jobs are available to you. You've got to find those pockets of time. And that means you got to wake up early to write the 3 informational emails to folks that you don't know or cold email. You got to do it. Those are the things that are going to take you to the next level and elevate yourself. So do the internal work, get organized, and definitely make the time. No one else can practice your elevator speech but you. So you got to make the time in front of the mirror and do it. If that's 15 minutes a day, imagine and what your future self will say. They'll say thank you. So those are the things to really keep in mind when you're looking to either pivot, when you're looking to make a transition, or you're looking to get a promotion. All of that is going to take that work. And those are some of the areas that I think are really key to get you into a better position.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Lauren. All of those things are, in a way, practical as well. We know oftentimes the internal work is kind of the hardest part to build that confidence so that we can be more intentional about what we want to do next. But all of those are absolutely necessary. Aliyah, do you want to give your take on that?
I think Lauren nailed it. The only thing I would add, just in practice of pivoting from whether it's an industry to another industry, company to another company, is make sure you are interviewing these companies. Like, yes, you're going in for these interviews, they're interviewing you, but please make sure you are interviewing companies, because you want to make sure, to Lauren's point, you've done all that work. You want to get into the right environment, right? And so make sure that after you've kind of really determined what your values are, you've kind of seen the company's values on paper, you have a general understanding based on the job description of what you're getting yourself into. Ask the hard questions. Don't be afraid to ask the hard questions. Don't be afraid to ask situational questions, right? If you've done interviews before, use that same type of format and find out from that company what their expectations are. And in those hypothetical situational questions, what you can expect when entering that environment, so that you're 100% certain that you're making the best educated choice that you can make, and it's in line with what you're looking to do. Because part of your strategy is making sure that those steps are firm steps. You don't want to step on some rickety steps. So make sure that you're doing your homework in advance, but for sure doing that full interview of that organization as well.
I think that's something I didn't learn for a long time. I just was kind of going into things a little timid, even just wanting to prove myself, as opposed to like understanding that we have to find synergy here. So you absolutely have to be intentional about finding synergy in the places that you go. Anthony, since you have kind of a non-traditional roadmap here and you've transitioned to entrepreneurship,
okay,
what is your take on being intentional?
Look, mine is just really add on more context around what Lauren said and what everybody already just said. Self-awareness is very important. And what I mean by that is, I know when I moved to Atlanta, I was on the title and the money, right? I want to be able to progress. I'm aggressive, blah, blah. I didn't care. I signed that offer letter without awareness, right? I actually thought that HR was HR everywhere. And I found out very quickly. In my first role, leaned into my strengths. They allowed me autonomy to be able to make changes, all those things. And just realized that company culture determines how HR is deployed. So that's part of that work that was referenced. It was like, I didn't do the work before. I'm just like, you know what? I'm gonna pivot out of here and go somewhere else. And I'm like, oh my God, what have I got myself into, right? So, and lean into your strengths. So I take strength finders. I like strength finders. That's a really good no cost, because I'm not trying to go into where it's going to take me. I can do anything, but the stuff that I can do magically, like organically, I'm gonna lean all the way in, and I need to be able to find a culture that supports that. I realized what I thought was that I was really good at continuous improvement. But what I realized is that I always had an entrepreneur spirit, and that is not a fit everywhere, right? So you got to do your research. The third is it is not the company's job or the manager's job for you to be intentional about you. Just by doing work is only going to reward you with more work, and that is coming from an HR person, okay? What's strategic is contributing at a higher level. That more work at the same level means nothing, but contributing at a higher level in which you're actually coming back and saying, hey, my job is here, but I've been contributing here. And here's the job description for the way that looks outside of here. That's going to create a whole different conversation, right? So well, I'm working hard, so I should automatically get promoted. Stop the madness. Do you know what I did? I proved the results. I went into, and I had that tough conversation with my boss, and I said, hey, I'm an HR specialist, but I've been living as a strategic HR business partner. And here's the numbers, here's the stats, here's the things to do it, and here's the pay. What are you going to do about it, right? And then I got two things that's going to happen. I'm going to get promoted, or I'm going to go somewhere else that's going to pay me the amount that I'm going to get, right? Or otherwise, I'm just sitting in the office just waiting for my manager coming around. No, don't do that. And then the interviewing the companies. Oh my goodness, I can't lean into that hard enough. Let me give you an example of that situational question you should ask. Can you tell me now, once you get the pleasantries out the way, I want to know about the team, your management style. Can you tell me about a time in which you and a direct report didn't see eye to eye on a matter of significance? And can you tell us about the situation and what happened at the end? And if that face get flustered, right? If you just you already know. Look, you see you smiling and everything, but I never would. A great leader will lean all the way into it, while one that may not would just be like, you know what? You might see that strong D in that disc profile, and that may not work for you, right? So be intentional. Just as strong as they are vetting you, you have the right to be as strong with them. And also another tip that I had was, you don't need permission from the manager to reach out to team members to say, hey, how's that manager, right? Because you can love your job, you can love the culture, but if that manager is not in alignment with your values, you're going to have a whole different experience. So reach out to them on LinkedIn. And guess what? If they don't respond, no answer is a response, okay? But if they reach back out to you like, my manager, Lauren, oh my goodness, come look, yes, I want to come out and meet. Use LinkedIn in the which is it's intended. So anyway, okay, you saw me. I was sitting here waiting. No, okay, that's it. That's what we'll say.
I saw you, Anthony.
You saw me. All right.
Well, all wonderful, wonderful tips. I do have a follow-up. I guess I'm interested in knowing, when did you all realize that you needed to be more intentional? Like, did you always have kind of the awareness that in order to have a certain trajectory that you had to make these intentional steps? Or did you have like a light bulb moment of like, oh, I haven't been intentional enough in trying to get to where I'm going? Did like a switch flip for you to decide to be more intentional, if that makes sense?
I'll start with that one. It took me to go into depression for me to realize to think differently about things. My grandmother, who I have idolized in her obituary here, she actually was instrumental in my upbringing. And during the time I've been in corporate HR, I've had that whole thing. I'm a Black man from Chicago. Nothing can harm me. I got to deal with things. And, I took that into my career, and it worked until it didn't. And so in that reconciliation, I realized that I need to look at life differently. And in that trauma, that made me be more intentional about where I was. The analogy I used was, I knew what I wanted to do. I wanted to be an executive of a Fortune 500 company, working in corporate HR. And the role was very clear to me. But what was happening was, and again, I like using analogies, was that I was going through like thickets. Like it was just like wide, like little cuts to get there. And it was a slow motion. And when my grandmother died, I fell off that path altogether. And that armor that I thought I had fell off. And all those cuts that I had been suffering was still there. And so I really had to go through a soul searching. And when I came back on the path, I saw a whole nother light. And that other light was this entrepreneurship journey. And it had me still look at my journey as one that I went through with intention that I'm able to share with others, right? Was that I needed to find out what my purpose was. And so I'm going back to that work of self-awareness. I didn't do that until it was too late. All right. It took me to have to encounter trauma for me to look back and say, you know what, I need to look at this thing different. And I think that that's the important work I think that we're doing here for those that are listening here is that, and I've seen that with, especially of people of color, it takes trauma for us to realize the reality of things. Don't wait for that. Like, don't go off these things that in the end, if you were to drop the material, the money, all of that kind of stuff, at the end, what really matters? And I think that was what made me look very intentional about what my next steps were.
Yeah, 100%, Anthony. I think this is something that I'm very, very passionate about, and you're absolutely right. Unfortunately, too many of us can relate to your experience. I'd say, it's the same situation for me. I mentioned that, when talking about mentorship and the importance there, part of that experience for me was that, I'm a returner because I had to take some time away, and I'm very open and public about, the fact that I'm a person with a disability. I have rheumatoid arthritis. And, working through that now is night and day compared to when I got diagnosed. And a lot of the reasons why I was in such a horrible place back then was because of, to Lauren's point, not having the self-awareness, or, to Anthony's point, it's that push mentality. It's that it's that mentality of you're so durable that if you just keep going, none of it matters. And that's not true. You're a human being. And so, reminding yourself of that and being conscious of that. And I completely agree with Anthony. Hopefully part of what we share today is that, kind of awareness and that news flash of, anyone who's going through that. Hey, you can achieve fantastic, beautiful things in your life, but it should never be at your own expense. You'll never get to enjoy it that way. Right. And so, I think for me, it was that same kind of moment of, hey, you've pushed and pushed and pushed your entire life. And when you say, Whitney, at what point did you kind of realize you need to be intentional? Well, I think both of us are taking intentionality from a different perspective. I think I've always had a mindset of you have to work super, super hard if you're going to get anything. And for as long as I can remember, kindergarten, I was like, I have to go. And no one's going to give you any handouts. No one's going to give you any breaks. And so having that mentality your entire life and hitting a wall and realizing, hey, you're actually a real person. And, those types of decisions have real consequences. That shifts, to Anthony's point, your entire perspective on life. And so I think for sure, just having that type of mind, being intentional and moving in the direction that's healthy for you and still productive for your career.
I love that. I definitely appreciate the stories, Aliyah and Anthony. And I do think, it sounds like now you're in a much healthier place, one that's like mentally and physically just, a place of stability. While I won't probably say something around like a moment for me, moving into intentionality, I will just kind of give advice to the audience around being able to center yourself. It's really critical. I feel like that's what I took away from what Anthony and Aliyah shared. If folks are familiar with Clarence Avant, he used to say there's numbers at the beginning and then there's numbers at the end. And that dash in between is what you do with your life. And so it's really critical that you do, you find your own intersection. What is the role? What is the job? What is the, entrepreneurship opportunity that centers your personal passion as well as your professional expertise? What is that crossroad? And really thinking about what that looks like for you, because you could have a number of those moments where you could change your career and it's the dream job, it's this. But just remember at the end of the day, those final numbers, when the day is done, what do you want people to say at your funeral? What do you want people to describe about who you were? Do you want them to say, Lauren Sills, executive, and she was, crushing it in the corporate office? Or do we want someone to say, Lauren Sills was an excellent wife, mother, friend, daughter, aunt? Those are the things and what's really important to me. And I do think that as you kind of look back at your career, to Aliyah's earlier point, when you look back and you see, oh man, I've actually been grinding, burning myself out. that's not how you want to spend it. You really want to figure out what are the important titles that are going to make you feel like you did what your purpose and what your calling was. And so just something for the team and the audience to think about. Center yourself, think about that dash, and make sure you find that intersection.
And I want to go back to advice that Lauren gave earlier too, because I feel like it's super relevant to this topic and what we're talking about. But I think we all get caught up sometimes, right? I mean, I'm speaking on my experience, Anthony's speaking on his experience. That doesn't mean that you don't have moments where you're like, shoot, I need to catch myself because I'm slipping right now. And I think that's also where that board of directors comes into play, right? Surrounding yourself with people who can, give you a real moment and say, hey, I'm going to hold you accountable for you, right? And so, super, super important to be grounded, have that self-awareness, and also surround you with people who are gonna help you with that and help hold you accountable for that as well.
And Lauren, one other component that you had said that I want to expand on is I've seen it many times. I've been a victim of it, of putting 200% into a singular job and employer. And back to centering yourself is that you got to find that balance. I think I realized it, not realizing it, when I started this company while I was still employed, because I needed something else to pour into outside of that. I've just been on the HR side and being where I'm at now, and clients that have come through with HR certified, it was like one of those things where when they put everything into this place and then they lay them off, it's devastating. And regardless on whether or not you got something going on or not, but when you have that balance and you're centered and you have other things to be able to balance that out, then that fall is not as impactful as it would have been if you're burning, grinding out in one place, one employer, putting everything you got, including soul, into that one. Because this is the thing that I say, this is coming from an HR person. In the United States, there's only one thing that's for certain, and that's employment at will. Okay, right? Employment at will, unless you have a contract like in the NBA somewhere. It is not, it could happen at any time, voicemail next day. And don't think that your job is not expendable, because it is, right? But again, I want to keep a healthy balance as it relates to it. This is being intentional, being self-aware, and not putting it on the company to put yourself in a secure position to be able to bounce back if something were to happen. Yeah.
Wow. No, thank you for just that level of transparency. I think just, each of the stories really just highlighted just a certain level of, introspectiveness, I think, that's needed, as well as some of, the difficult conversations, you have to have with yourself to, know what's best for you as a person next. And so I just want to take a slight pivot for our last question, our last topic. And just kind of more so around the operating environment. And so, navigating the company culture, corporate culture, can be, challenging, especially, as a young professional, in an entirely new environment. And so, obviously, COVID's created some additional challenges around that. And so really, I'm just kind of curious to hear just some of you guys' insights on, succeeding in that corporate culture and really, having effective, difficult conversations. And so I know that, Anthony, you somewhat hit on this, and personally, your experience, transitioning, to your own business. So do you mind leading us off with a couple thoughts there?
Yeah. I find that company culture is the ultimate driver on whether or not a lot of people of color succeed or fail, because it must be aligned with your values. So, like, for example, I find, and it was for me and for others, is that you enter a profession because of a reason. I think of, like, for example, a flight attendant. I use this as an analogy. The business purpose of a flight attendant is the safety and security of that equipment that's flying up in the air. But that's not why people become a flight attendant, right? They want to be able to travel, be able to experience new things. And then it really boils down to the culture of the airline, right? So there's those elements, just like with HR, like we're in the people business. But I promise you, you better not in an interview say, I like it because I'm great at customer service. Do not do that, right? Because HR is for the sake, like it's your representative of the organization. But there's other things, there's other components that you don't have to have up front that still drives the passion for what you do. And in order for that to happen, you have to have the right culture to cultivate your values to be able to really amplify that differently. I know that was a complex equation I just talked about, but you have to consider all of those aspects. I'm into the reason why I chose HR as my profession is because of diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging, justice, right? That I'm not here to tell you what you want to hear. I'm here to tell you what you need to hear. But this is the reality, is that in a lot of organizations, they don't want that. They want you to do what they want to do, and that's it. And you have to say, well, is that the type of culture that I can be under, right? And doing the work. So navigating company culture requires their alignment of your work values to their culture. And then you have to make a decision on whether or not that's someplace that you want to stay, right? And I will say that I've seen in my profession, people change themselves, and I was one of them, to adapt and acclimate to that culture and lose yourself in that process. And you don't want to do that. You don't want to do that, right? You want to be able to make that decision to either acclimate, still have that balance of not losing yourself, or go leave and use the time that you're in there to be able to transition to a place that allows you to be able to do that. And then the last thing is knowing that there's still give and take. You're not going to finding a company that aligns with it, just like finding a mate, okay, or finding a church home. You're not going to find everything, right? So when you get to that point in which you're just like, oh, I don't know if I can be here, like this is like almost do the plus and minuses. Like is there more pluses, and weight them too, right? Now, because not every single one has that, and really do the work on whether or not it's worth it to stay and push through, and maybe there's just some element that's going to change, or whether or not you really do need to do don't wait till it blows up, because I think all of us, like, that's the worst thing that can wind up happening from that aspect. So anyway, I just threw that complex equation out there. Did that make sense? Look, I almost confused myself.
No, that makes a lot of sense. And Lauren, I'm sure you've probably done a number of plus and minus charts, as you've moved between organizations. And so, and you mind just kind of sharing your experience and really kind of navigating the company culture, just especially between the different organizations?
Sure. So I definitely think about one of the greatest compliments I've ever received in my career thus far. And it was in an elevator. I worked at JP Morgan Chase at the time, and I worked in JP Morgan Chase Foundation, to be clear. The head of the foundation, her name was Karen. We were in the elevator. I just had presented in front of the chief people officer. And she was like, great presentation. We were kind of talking about it. And then she was like, Lauren, remind me how long you've been here. Have you been here for 7 years? And I said, Karen, I've been here for like 18 months. It was technically like 19 months, but she thought I had been at this company for so long because of the number of relationships, executive presence, the idea essentially that I got to present was my idea. And she was a part of that, kind of helping me get in front of that audience. But what I have made clear in every single role, in every single company that I've been able and blessed to work with or for, is that I make relationships really the key strategy of my work. So I'm not someone who always sits at her desk. I'm definitely someone who does the work, but it's critical for me to join, business resource groups or ERGs, find affinity groups. It's critical for me to make coffee dates. So I really do try on either Friday or a certain day to build connections. I'm also a lifelong learner. So I want to learn about the business. I want to learn about the people who are behind this billions of dollar business. And so that really does help to kind of expedite in some ways my success and progress, because I'm able to start to connect the dots across different functions. I'm also starting to see how our department or function can really support or partner in other ways and be a value add to other teams. So I really do think if you make people, because it's more important to get along with people than it is to get ahead. So as long as you also get along with folks, you probably will get ahead. But it's really important to build the relationships, because the work product at the end of the day is going to be better. And so we talked about earlier, like make deposits before you make withdrawals. I'm making the deposits. I'm making the deposits every single day. And I'm remembering every little detail. Whitney can tell you. I'll be like, Grandma Hazel, how's she doing? Da-da-da. Or how was your son's birthday party? It's just important to me to build those relationships, because if I'm spending, and it's 8:00 here in New York, if I'm spending all day here, I might as well make friends, make relationships, and enjoy my time. And that's because people will do that. So just important for folks to kind of think about ways that you can be successful. It is about the people.
Well said. Well said. And I guess for Aliyah, I want to take a slight twist to the question.
Okay.
As far as just having some of those difficult conversations. And so I know you shared some of or a bit about your background,
Mm-hmm.
and I would imagine that you've had a number of difficult conversations. So when it comes to having those talks,
Right.
whatever it might be about, do you have any tips addressing whether it be with leadership or even peers with difficult talks?
Sure. I mean, I think some of this, is definitely applicable to the conversation that we've been having as well. But, two key things, and Anthony mentioned it earlier, but authenticity, just incredibly important to come in with authenticity. And that leads into the second thing, which is building trust. And so, part of navigating any culture, and then to your point of being able to build a strong foundation for difficult conversations, is one, people having an expectation of what to expect and being able to trust that with you. And so for me, that's and I think anyone who has a DEI background or is working in DEI right now knows that it's one of those rare jobs where the job gets built when you're in the interview. As you're being interviewed, everyone's starting to think about, oh, here are the things that we can do, regardless of what your job description says. And it's a beautiful thing, right? Because it puts you in a position to really make an impact. But what that also means is everyone has a different idea of what it is that you do and what your job is. And so coming in, it's not only do you need to help people get to know you so that you build that rapport, you build that trust, and they think of you first, but you also have to get an understanding from them, tell me about your thoughts on the DEIB function, and how have you interacted with DEIB in the past? What has your relationship been like in the past? And just listen, just absorb, take that in, understand their best methods of working, their best methods of communication, and then share, and for me, it was, I came in with, here's my strategy, here's my philosophy, here's my approach, and walked everyone through, here are all the things that, you can expect from me. Here's a little bit about me and who I am. And through this process of learning with you and working with you and partnering with you, we're going to build in the how of how we approach this and how we do this and how we accomplish these things, because this is a partnership. My business is the business of being a doctor. You go to the doctor, you have a problem. I didn't create your problem, but you come to me and I'm going to give you a diagnosis. I'll give you a prescription and I'll help you with long-term and proactive care. Right. And so, I build that foundation with the leaders and with the people that I work with. And then from there, when having those conversations, you always want to create a safe environment where it's free from judgment, where people feel comfortable being vulnerable. If you think about some of the things that we talk about and some of the, not just in the DEI space, but, a lot of what I do also touches some of the employee relations space. These are sensitive conversations. And a lot of times, you could be met with defensiveness, and a bit of that sometimes is how we approach those things with the leaders that we're working with. And so it's making sure that, you have full awareness of that, and that you're, one, building that foundation, like I mentioned, building your expertise so that they're thinking of you, but then also going in and really creating that space for open flow of dialogue.
Well said. Well said. I love it. I love it. Thank you for that. I know we are getting close or right at time. So Whitney, I'll hand it over to you.
Well, I think I'm overwhelmed by the wealth of knowledge and all the great things that have been shared. I'm sitting here like trying to take notes, trying to just log it in my memory. But thank you all so much. Thank you for sharing all of your insights, your personal experiences. Great tips. I have some homework to do myself. I need to build my board of trustees. I need to get it together. I need to make sure I'm centering myself day to day, really, so that I can continue to take this journey in a healthy way. So thank you all for sharing parts of your journey with us. I know we didn't leave much time for questions, but if you all had questions, we can circle back and answer the questions in the comments after the recording. So please feel free to still put them in the comments. Also, we want to invite everyone to join NAAAHR if you think that that is going to be beneficial to you, either personally or professionally. So you can go to NAAAHR.org to look for membership information. Am I missing something, Jalen? I'm trying to think of everything here.
No, I believe that's everything. I just want to make sure that we do share the information or the LinkedIn profiles for our panelists. Once again, they have amazing background, dropped so many gems, so much knowledge. And so definitely want to make sure that, we get connected with these thought leaders.
So I'm sharing the QR codes that will link to our panelists' LinkedIn profile. So you all can scan the screen there to connect with the panelist or take note of their names so that you can connect with them later. And Jalen, if you have access to the survey QR code, if you want to put that up, we can do that as well. Does anybody have any last words before we end our stream? Uh-oh.
We said so much, like it was just
right.
I'm still consuming it all, but I think that if you are here and you're listening to our voice, you are being intentional, right? You've taken the first step, or a step, as it relates to, lessons learned from all of us, all of our shared experiences, to be able to learn and to grow. So hopefully we'll see you within the NAAAHR community. As you're trying to traverse, your career. I'm just glad to be here. Thank you for inviting us.
Awesome. Thank y'all so much. Enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thank you.
Great seeing.
Bye,
Thanks so
everyone.
much.
Everyone. Thank you.